Horse-drawn streetcars began operating on the streets of Omaha in the winter of 1868-69. They were piloted by a driver with a conductor and were pulled by two horses or mules. The cars were slow, unheated in winter, and usually dirty because passengers who walked the unpaved streets carried dirt and mud into the cars. Similar situations existed in Council Bluffs beginning in 1870. When cable cars began running in San Francisco, other cities, including Omaha, saw this kind of streetcar as a cleaner and more efficient method of moving people in the city. Despite their expense in building and operating, two separate cable car lines began to compete with the horse-drawn streetcars in Omaha in 1887. In 1888, the entire picture changed when streetcars powered by electricity from the overhead wire began running from Council Bluffs to Omaha. Council Bluffs was about the third city in the nation to have electric streetcars. In 1889, two companies in Omaha began operating electric streetcars. By 1895, they displaced both the cable cars and the horse-drawn streetcars. As the two cities moved into the 20th century, streetcar lines began to reach into all sections of town. The cars became larger and faster, and they carried thousands of riders from their homes to downtown jobs or to church or to the movies or even the grocery stores. By mid-century, many car lines had been supplanted by buses because of lack of ridership. Color film became readily available for the streetcar buffs to record movement for posterity. In the early 1950s, downtown Omaha was still the hub of retail business. Department stores, clothiers, jewelers, bookstores, restaurants, and motion picture theaters still brought thousands of people downtown. Westbound traffic on Farnham shows busy streetcar and automobile traffic. Farnham was still a two-way street. These pictures are from 1954, the year of Omaha's centennial, as evidenced by the centennial emblem on the pole in the upper left. At 20th and Farnham, by the Paramount Theater, an eastbound streetcar from Dundee prepares to turn south to continue its journey to 10th on Harney, just a block south. It arrived at 10th and Harney, no longer going any farther south, but ready to turn back to Farnham to once again go to Dundee. Streetcars going to North 45th also went west on Farnham, doubling the number of cars the photographer could find westbound on Farnham. Before we get too far into this picture story, let's look briefly at how an electric streetcar operates. It will refresh the memories of older people who remember riding the streetcars and will provide enlightenment to the younger ones who are totally unfamiliar with this kind of public transportation vehicle. The electric motors which are attached to the axles and wheels are not visible here. They get their power from a 3/8-inch solid copper wire stretched some 18 feet above the street. Mounted on top of the streetcar is a spring mechanism which holds up the long trolley pole which reaches up to connect to the overhead wire by means of a rotating bronze wheel. At the end of the trolley pole, a rope is attached. The manufacturer's catalog illustrates the spring mechanism. It shows the trolley wheel inside its harp. This is a new bronze trolley wheel ready for use. It is about 6 inches in diameter and weighs 4 pounds. Here we see a trolley wheel before it is machined and polished, held inside its harp. This one measures only 4 inches. The spring tension of the trolley pole holds the wheel firmly against the underside of the overhead wire, where it constantly collects the 550 or 600 volts of direct current. The wheel is the trolley. From it we get the term trolley pole and trolley car, which is another name for a streetcar. In some parts of the nation, a streetcar is called a trolley. However, in the central part of the nation, the common term is streetcar. Newspapers, on the other hand, often use the British term tram, which comes from tram car, which also means streetcar. They found the 4-letter word tram easier to fit into a headline than the 9-letter word streetcar. At the shortened end of the Council Bluffs Fairmount Park line, which ran until 1948, this small double-end Birney car has stopped because the line no longer continued into the park. The double-end car does not turn around. It stops, and the operator puts up one trolley pole, which he has not been using, and pulls down the other. To raise the pole, he unhooks it and raises it to the wire. On this HO scale model streetcar, all you need to do is visualize a little man controlling the pole with the rope, first unhooking it and then raising it. A straight track with a straight trolley wire above it is shown here on Ames Avenue by North High School. The overhead wire, enhanced in this photo by pen and ink, is held in place by span wires, which span the street to connect to poles along the street, which are planted at perhaps 50 to 60 foot intervals. When the track divides at a turnout, commonly called a switch, the overhead wire also divides. On the wire is an overhead wire frog, a cast iron device weighing about 12 pounds. This is the underside of a well-worn and rusty frog, showing the interior runners which the trolley wheel follows. If the streetcar is going straight ahead, the trolley will take this path. If the car is turning, the direction of the car will pull the trolley to the other path. All overhead wire is attached to the supporting span wires by ears. This is an ear, 15 inches long, with a groove running the full length. If this wooden dowel were a trolley wire, it would be forced into the groove, and the edges of the ear would be crimped around it. The ear is threaded at the top. Into this would be threaded the upper part of the ear, which has a provision for being bolted to the span wire. Locked into place, the trolley would roll along the wire, riding under the ear and continuing on. When the track curves, the overhead wire also curves. In that case, the ears are threaded into either a single curve hanger or a double curve hanger like this. In this picture, both single and double curve hangers are seen. The doubles look much like flying birds. Although a curved track is literally a curved wire is in reality a series of tangents running from ear to ear around the curve. Lights at night shine on the curved wire to show what these tangents look like. Men of the line crew worked from an elevated platform to erect, adjust, or to take down overhead wires. Later on in this film, you'll see them working. One of the favorite locations to watch streetcars was at 40th and Dodge Streets. We see a streetcar turning south onto 40th, pick up a passenger, and we watch it head for downtown. From the north, we see a car come down the hill from North 45th. We watch as it discharges a passenger before crossing Dodge to follow the Dundee car heading downtown. If this is the North 45th car, it will go straight ahead on 40th. But if it is going to Dundee, it will turn left onto Dodge and go west. Down the Dodge Street, Brick Street, and over Saddle Creek Road. It will continue to another favorite location of 50th and Underwood Avenues. Here, that westbound Dundee car on Dodge turns north on 49th Street, onto the single track down the middle of the street. It was 1892 when electric streetcars first went to Dundee, which was named for Dundee in Kansas City, which was named for Dundee in Scotland. We'll wait a moment to watch a car departing from Dundee, heading east on Dodge. The car continues past 50th, going west on shady Underwood Avenue. On a different day, when the trees have lost their leaves and more sunlight filters through, we see a car continuing west past Dundee Presbyterian Church, completed in 1928, where it will end its run and back into the Y to turn around. A unique signal system kept streetcars from meeting head-on this half-mile length of single track. Mounted high on a pole was a special signal which turned red when a streetcar passed west of 50th. When the car returned to 50th and turned south, the light went out, indicating that entry was safe. That westbound car at the top of the picture turned the light red again. Now, out of the picture, that car has returned and the light turns out again. And this car turns the light red again. Back to a summer day, a car goes east up the hill to 50th and will turn the red light out as it turns south toward Dodge, 6 blocks away. As you have noted, not all the pictures for this film story were taken on sunny summer days. At the end of the North 45th car line, streetcars always were coming and going. For reasons unknown to us today, the final 2 blocks of double track were only a single track. But unlike Dundee, the streetcar operator could easily see if he could proceed to the Y to turn around. Now, looking to the south, we watch northbound car 1011, about which you will learn more later. It comes down the single track as it approaches Bedford Avenue. It will cross, then reverse directions, followed by a second car, because there was adequate trackage for 2 or even 3 cars at the same time. A car barn location often had much streetcar activity. This southbound car has ended its afternoon run and has turned west off 10th Street onto Pacific Street in preparation for backing half a block to the car barn entrance, where it will go onto one of the tracks in the north part of the barn. This is the trolley of the third car to go in. There goes the second car. Now the third car will do what the first car did, namely change the trolley wires before backing. On the overhead wire, note the many double curve hangers with their two curved arms, and also the single curve hangers with their one curved arm. We'll take a moment's break while we run through this streetcar's destination signs to see some of the many Omaha locations where streetcars went. With no provision for reaching the car barn door from the northbound track, this northbound car passes the car barn entrance and proceeds also past Pacific Street. This enables it to back across the crossover track to put it backwards on the southbound track, which takes it to the car barn entrance. Afternoon pictures always found the car barn entrance in deep shade. However, this morning tripper, that is a car which has made just one morning round trip during rush hour, backs into the barn in full morning sunlight, identically to the way the previous afternoon cars did. The streetcar operator never backed his car while sitting in his seat at the front of the car. Controls for power and brakes were available as the operator stood at the rear, giving him full control to see exactly where he was going. Another car barn location is 24th and Ames Avenue, where initially we dropped back to 1947 to watch many streetcars in motion. Along the right is the 433-foot-long brick car barn, and we see cars bumping across the Beltline tracks just south of the barn. This car is going north to 42nd and Grand Avenue. It will turn west onto Ames Avenue. Another car comes from that destination and turns south, while another streetcar coming from 24th and Kansas Avenue turns east onto Ames Avenue. The motorman has finished his day, and another is ready to replace him. Now we see a car cross the intersection backwards to prepare to head for downtown as a tripper. It is followed by a car on its regular run, also heading downtown. With transfers in hand, these people are changing cars to go west. This car goes across the intersection to gain the proper location for backing into the west door of the car barn. This tripper will turn east toward the car barn doors, making the operator of the car behind manually throw the switch for a left turn. Only in midsummer did the sun in the mornings or evenings shine on the north doors of the Ames Avenue car barn, and with compensation for the redness of the evening sun, these pictures show 1951 movement. Many of the cars are rush hour trippers ending their runs, but some are base trains continuing their regular runs. This car barn was built in 1898 at the time of the Trans-Mississippi Exposition by a predecessor company and could hold 80 of today's streetcars. When streetcars were taken from South Omaha later in 1951, the barn closed and was sold as a warehouse. In 1982, it was accidentally set afire and later was razed. Streetcars always backed in, ready for forward exiting. At a later date, west of the car barn on Ames Avenue, we watch cars going to and from 42nd and Grand Avenue past the Beacon Theater. This 1952 shot, after the Ames car barn had closed, shows a 42nd and Grand Avenue car heading downtown, but destined later for the car barn at 10th and Pierce. North of the car barn on 24th Street in 1951, these rush hour cars are going to the end of the line at Kansas Avenue. Past Pearl Methodist Church and Y-ing at Kansas Avenue by Miller Park, where the afternoon sun makes a shady street. In 1946, after increased wartime streetcar use had taken its toll of wear and tear on the city's streetcar tracks, the Omaha and Council Bluffs Street Railway Company took a car built in 1904 as a passenger car and used later as a pipe fitting car, and converted it to a rail grinder. This four-wheel car was fitted to drag abrasive bricks under pressure along the rails to remove the corrugation. It was painted with zebra stripes and carried an operator and two workmen as it made dozens of trips, which eventually gave streetcar passengers smoother rides and decreased the wear on streetcar wheels. It was seen all over the city. Here on 6th Street, here on 20th, here on 10th, and here on 45th. If you want to visualize the rocking ride of an early Omaha streetcar, here is your chance. We begin to follow this car line on a sunny summer day as the cars Y at 6th and Center. The line begins going north on 6th Street, following the route of early day horse-drawn streetcars where, after the urging of City Councilman Tom Lowry, a car line was established in 1889. At that time, it was known as the Lowry Line, and it served this growing part of town. then west on Pierce Street, where behind us is the two-story car barn built in 1909. We have previously visited it. The car line turns north, it goes past the Art Deco Union Station, erected in 1931, where in 1951 some 50 passenger trains arrive and depart daily. North to Farnham to turn west. 100 years earlier, the center of town was at 9th and Farnham, where today the Metz Beer sign stands. Metz Beer was brewed in Omaha for 97 years, until 1961. Now 15th and Farnham, the center of retail activity in 1951, where streetcars to and from South Omaha pass north and south. Both Farnham Line's cars stop here by the Nebraska Clothing Company, which was in business at this location since 1898. In the background is one of Omaha's first-class hotels, the Paxton. A short shot, still looking east, but from 16th. Then back to 15th, where we see dozens of office workers and shoppers lining up to board the streetcars. On a different day, we see cars approaching 24th Street. With the Hotel Hamilton at left and the Infant Nebraska Furniture Mart on the south side of Farnham in the distance, we see more westbound Farnham streetcars. Now our car approaches 40th by the Admiral Theater. It will turn north to Dodge, just 2 blocks away. At Dodge, the 2 car lines divided, but who would throw the track switch? Dundee cars wanted the switch thrown right to send the cars left. North 45th cars wanted the opposite to go straight ahead. Therefore, a special relay box was mounted on the trolley wire a block behind. If the trolley wheel of the Dundee cars went through it with power on, the switch would automatically be thrown right. If North 45th cars coasted through it with power off, the tongue moved left or straight ahead. Now, going north on 40th on a different day, we approach Cumming Street, 9 blocks distant. At one time, streetcar tracks ran in both directions from here on Cumming Street. Past the Walnut Hill Reservoir, we approach Hamilton Street to turn west by Dixie Cream Donuts and the 40th Street Theater, known for years as the Wynn Theater. Ahead is Military Avenue going northwesterly. On another day, we watch a car on Military Avenue near the landmark Military Theater, and the car turns due north, where at one time streetcars for Benson angled northwesterly. From the grounds of the Nebraska School for the Deaf, we watch the car approach Bedford Avenue, where it will end its run and reverse directions. This car line to South Omaha once extended north from here more than 2 miles to Florence. Now the car line ends at 30th and 4th Streets, a street named for Fort Omaha in the rear. The line heads east on 4th Street to 24th. Then south on 24th to Ames Avenue, where we have visited previously. Then east on Ames Avenue to angling Commercial Avenue. South on 16th Street to Locust Street, where 2 decades earlier Streetcars from Carter Lake and East Omaha turned around. South on 16th Street past the Stores Brewery to just north of downtown at Webster Street, where South Omaha cars go through downtown on 15th Street. South on 15th by Union Pacific headquarters with the giant shield atop, and the car moves into the downtown business area. The car, destined for 26th and Q Streets in South Omaha, continues south to Howard Street. There it turns west to rejoin 16th Street just south of the Orpheum Theater. Then south across the 16th Street Viaduct over the railroad tracks. At Vinton Street, it meets the northbound car, then turns southwesterly. Vinton Street is at the crest of the hills and does not run straight east and west as it goes through the thriving business area. At 24th Street, the car turns south for the remaining mile or so to South Omaha. Here we will stop temporarily and drop back about 3.5 miles north to Lake Street, and the other car line to South Omaha, the Crosstown line. Streetcars going south from 42nd and Grand turn east off 24th, where crosstown cars turn west off 24th. The end of the line is at 29th on Lake, a street named not for a lake, but for an early Omaha judge. We watch the car going up the grade to where it will reverse directions at the Y. A company worker is greasing the track. Streetcars had solid axles. Around a curve, the inside wheel had less distance to travel and would squeal unless greased. The crosstown line started east here and goes past the company shops, where many of these streetcars were built and where all are maintained and painted. At the company shops, a streetcar has moved onto the transfer table to be moved a short distance to one of the maintenance stalls. It is backed in where workmen awaited. Then the transfer table moves north, and we see retired cars in the distance. Only faster black and white film could capture indoor activity, where cars were lifted from their trucks for some kind of maintenance work. A motor removed from one of the cars is being transferred to a work area. The crosstown car line continued east on Lake to 24th, where it turned south. It continued past Creighton University, established in 1878 on this site. At that time, it was criticized for building so far out into the country. The car line continues south over the hill at St. Mary's Avenue, named in the very early days of Omaha for the convent which once was there. It heads for Leavenworth Street. At Leavenworth Street, where streetcars have long since ceased to run. The route passes Poppleton Street on the way to the 24th Street Viaduct over all the railroad tracks. Crosstown cars join the other South Omaha cars at Vinton Street, and we continue south on a typical all-brick street. In South Omaha at J Street, a morning car passes South High, which is behind us. While an afternoon shot shows the school. Then on to the South Omaha Business District a few blocks farther. At L Street, the line passes the new Chief Theater. Streetcars no longer continue the additional mile or so to Albright, but turn west at N Street at the Packers National Bank, a long-established fixture in South Omaha. At 26th Street, the lines turn east onto Q Street, the end of the line. When we ride a northbound car in South Omaha, we experience the typical sway of a streetcar. This film was exposed for the car interior. Unfortunately, this 1952 film has deteriorated. However, it captures the record of the car line which ran from 42nd and Grand Avenue to downtown. Until 5 years earlier, these cars continued on out Leavenworth Street to Exarban Field, a location soon to be seen. This car line winds into 42nd Street and Grand Avenue. It then goes east to 40th Street. At 40th Street, It turns south 4 blocks down the hill to Ames Avenue, a street mentioned many times earlier in this film story. The car line goes east past North High School and on to 30th Street. Once again east past the Beacon Theater, replaced in 1972 by the Washington Public Library. On to 24th. South and across the Beltline tracks. South on 24th, east on Lake Street, at 20th, south again. Another bumpy railroad crossing near Nicholas Street. Across Cumming Street to Dodge Street. At 20th and Dodge is the Jewish Community Center. Unseen on the left is Central High School atop Capitol Hill. Down the Dodge Street Hill, where the sign on 18th tells us that the Hotel Fontanelle is just 1 block south. It is Christmas week, and the downtown decorations on 16th Street suggest it. South, past such stores as J.L. Brandeis, F.W. Woolworth, Fred and Clark Haas, Baker's Shoes, Zales Jewelers, Virginia Dare, Goldstein Chapman, C.V. Brown, Lerner Shops, B&G Hosiery, Ted's Pen Shop, Neisner Brothers. Only King Fong Restaurant remains in the 1990s. At Harney Street, the car turns west to 20th Street. At 20th, it turns north 3 blocks to Dodge Street. As it crosses Dodge northbound, it rejoins its route, having completed the downtown loop. At 42nd and Grand, the streetcar departs for downtown, running easily in a few inches of snow past 2 men who have decided that their auto really needs tire change. In the early 1950s, the city did not immediately plow snow and generously spread salt and sand. Also, it was a time before studded tires or snow tires, and before front-wheel drive autos. At another of the many snowstorms in this film story, just before darkness made photography impossible, a company snow sweeper appears on Hamilton Street, sent out to clear the snow from the streetcar track. As was typical, it was followed by a salt car. This is another of those 50-year-old passenger cars rebuilt for winter use only. It is fitted with a giant interior vat full of rock salt to be dribbled through chutes into the track to keep it from freezing. Farther along on Military Avenue, the slower work equipment holds up a passenger car as the backward revolving bristles of the sweeper splatter the snow onto whatever was along the street. On another car line, during a different snowstorm, streetcars run easily, although automobiles have a tendency to slip and slide, especially on the city's many brick streets. This is in the area of 16th and Commercial Avenue. After several inches of snow had accumulated, automobile traffic was slowed considerably. The exterior sign on the streetcar promotes radio station KFAB, broadcasting in Omaha since about 1923. The sweeper is one of 13 owned by the street railway. With only a single truck and 4 wheels, it rocks and sways as it does its job. Here, its side blade is in use to widen the path, a move appreciated by automobile drivers. Here's a sweeper downtown, followed by its companion salt car. With the street mostly clear of snow and the sun out, all traffic was running virtually normally here on 20th Street. In the distance is Lake Street, where 60 years earlier, one of Omaha's 2 cable car lines terminated. Today, it is a 42nd and Grand electric streetcar heading downtown. Festive decorations on 16th Street downtown greet Christmas shoppers as we look north, seeing the clock tower of the downtown post office in the distance at Dodge Street. What can be more pleasant than a nice gentle snowfall? On the first day of spring, no snow at all can be better if you are driving home from work. But snow will fall and automobiles will slide. A light snow is no hindrance to the operation of a streetcar, as we see here on North 40th Street. Downtown, of course, it was snowing too, and it appeared that the snow would come and go with little concern to anyone. However, that is not what happened. Iced in, snowbound, these three streetcars at the Hamilton Street Viaduct were representative of all the streetcars on the city's three car lines. They are stalled because the previous evening's wet snow was packed into the tracks during the night by automobile tires, and it froze solidly. Salt cars were not sent out because it appeared that the snow and slush would soon melt. But the track was packed and repacked full of frozen snow. Streetcars and sweepers intermingled and fought the ice all morning. Typically, the sweeper plowed forward and brushed until it stalled. Then it backed and made additional onslaughts against the frozen mass. Finally, this sweeper got to the end of the line at North 45th, where it was obliged to turn around and fight the track on the other side of the street. Downtown, the situation was about the same. Although the cars we saw earlier had gotten through, continued packing by automobile tires kept the streetcar tracks full of frozen snow. Here on Lower Farnham, we see westbound streetcars where wheels derailed easily, making the cars back up time and time again to re-rail. Every ice-moving method was put to use. Even the frustrated streetcar operators got into the act. Scraping seemed to work as well as any, but pickaxes helped too. Ice chunks, 2 inches thick, showed the patterns of the brick streets. Finally, a company truck tried to pull a 20-ton streetcar. That succeeded only in tearing the tire chains off the truck tires. Toward noon, westbound cars began to move. And by 1 o'clock, with the aid of rising temperatures and salt from trucks, streetcar travel was about normal. Relaying a streetcar track was an unusual occurrence, and in the late summer of 1954 it was very odd because talk of abandoning the last of Omaha's streetcar lines was already at hand. The Northwest Radial Highway, a divided 4-lane thoroughfare, was to cross this, the North 45th car line, and it was to be some 18 inches lower than the present street level. Therefore, the work had to be done. Throughout 1 week, the southbound track on the west side of 40th Street was torn up, and all cars were routed onto the northbound track. At that time, the southbound track was relaid at its new lower level. On Saturday, when there was no regular streetcar traffic, the new lower track was tested, and the temporary track, often called a shoe fly, was relocated to direct all streetcars to the west track. Almost like asking a sick man in the hospital to move his own bed, the streetcar here pulled the shoe fly track to its new position. Of course, it was the most powerful machine on the site. Company workmen, accustomed to working with heavy steel track work, although doing little in recent years, checked the track gauge and made sure that the bolts were tight. During the running of streetcars in this instance, there was never a derailment. While streetcars ran on this single track, the other track was torn up and relayed at its new lower level. Overhead wire workers changed the temporary frogs, unafraid of working with live wires because they are not grounded. They did their job well because there were no reports of dewiring trolleys during this operation. With no automobile traffic permitted, the streetcars maintained schedules despite the slowness required to negotiate the temporary elevated trackage at both ends. At this time, the northbound track has been torn up. Later, when track relaying was completed and temporary asphalt paving had been laid, both automobiles and streetcars crossed Cumming Street with hardly noticeable change, except for the slight dip at the new level. But the end of trolley traffic was rapidly approaching. 3 months later, on March 4, 1955, both remaining car lines bade a sad farewell, and the city rail transportation ceased to exist. We drop back to September 7, 1947, when streetcar lines using Leavenworth Street were to be ended in favor of buses. This eliminated the south ends of 3 car lines. Cars from 42nd and Grand had been running to Exarban since 1941, taking thousands of people here to horse races and Coliseum events and transporting them home again. The long storage strap for extra streetcars awaiting the rush of people heading back to the streetcars has now been removed from the area at the left. And on this last day of operations, streetcars were about to give up the 4 blocks of private right-of-way paralleling 63rd Street. They are looping as usual near the entrance to Exarban, but it was the final day for them. Until this time, this was the only place where an Omaha car line looped at the end instead of Ying. Since 1930, Benson streetcars had been using Leavenworth Street and then going south to their private right-of-way here along the west side of Hanscom Park. Streetcars began street running again at Ed Creighton Boulevard to go the remaining 3/4 of a mile to the end of the line at Grover Street. Their destination signs said Park West. After this day, Benson cars would loop downtown and quit running entirely a year later. Shortly after, we see a streetcar at 42nd and Grand which bears a destination sign of Downtown Loop instead of Exarban. In 1947, we see pictures of the intercity car line, begun in 1888 to connect to the two cities. At this time, it is perhaps the last intercity car line in the nation, and it uses half a mile of private right-of-way between the Missouri River Bridge and the connection to Avenue A in Council Bluffs. It offered frequent and speedy service between the downtown areas of both cities, and it is a profitable car line using rear entrance, 2-man cars, many of which were built in Omaha dating back to 1908. And this is what they looked like in color in the summer of 1948, a few months before streetcars quit running in Council Bluffs. At the left is the new white wooden roller coaster, which operated about 16 years at Playland Park. Not so profitable, however, were the small Council Bluffs feeder lines, which used 1-man, double-end Birney cars. Here, heading south on South Main Street at about 15th Avenue, this car, which ran from East Pierce, turns west to bump across the railroad tracks of the Rock Island, Milwaukee, and Burlington Railroads on 16th Avenue. This Birney car, near the Union Pacific Transfer, is on the south end of the 5th Avenue car line. It will go north to 5th Avenue on a single track. It will go north to 5th Avenue on a single track, where it meets the opposing car at the passing track near 15th Street. This car is on the Harrison line. One of the feeder lines ran into Fairmount Park until hill cave-ins caused the line to be shortened to Graham Avenue in 1932, and we watched a streetcar turn from First Street onto Graham Avenue. Again, just south of downtown, a southbound car destined for 29th Avenue meets another at the passing track before crossing the railroad tracks. Omaha streetcars carried passengers for the final time on March 4, 1955, following which the Dundee and North 45th car lines were taken over by buses. The Omaha and Council Bluffs Street Railway Company ran its official last trip on Saturday, March 5, using car 1011, bedecked with red, white, and blue bunting to carry a group of businessmen from the Blackstone Hotel at 36th and Farnham to the car barn for a final ride. The car traveled west through downtown, past the Blackstone, following the Dundee line all the way to 50th and Underwood, the closest remaining place to turn a car around, since the Y at 40th and Farnham had been removed a few years earlier because it was no longer needed. The last trip car was running empty here at 50th and Underwood Avenue. As well as here at 40th and Dodge. But at 36th and Farnham on this chilly morning, the crowd had assembled. Radio announcers had interviews with company officials, and the invited guests climbed aboard past the covered fare box where the sign said, "This is on the house." The 2-mile ride to the car barn began with men waving goodbye. However, probably none had ridden a streetcar in years. They went east on Farnham, in downtown, east of 16th on Harney, the car stopped at 10th, where the switch was thrown for a right turn. South on 10th, and at 10th and Pierce, a few more men posed for a photo. Then the carload of men detrained. People milled about, posed for pictures, and wondered about the future of an all-bus city. Since the last car last night had turned left, a workman had to manually throw the switch for car 1011 to go straight ahead across Pierce Street. A modern bus awaited the men to return them downtown. After the last photo and a final interview, the empty car moved south in preparation for backing into Pierce Street. It needed to turn left to be northbound to back into the barn. And then the barn was silent. In the early summer of 1955, after the streetcars had stopped running, the bodies of 30 of the remaining cars, less motors and wheels, were taken to a North Omaha Bible camp. Some were used as classrooms, some were made into sleeping cabins, some were left to the vandals. When the camp closed in the early 1980s, Western Heritage Museum was offered a car. The best available one was number 1014, and the museum took it and set workmen to restoring it. Today, even without wheels, it is a popular museum attraction. The only other Omaha car still in existence is car 910, which has rested in a Benson area backyard since the early 1950s, where it was used as a summer picnic shelter. It is still restorable, but its fate is uncertain. If you can imagine streetcars running here on South 10th Street, you'll appreciate their proposal for a heritage trolley line to connect Rosenblatt Stadium, home of the Omaha baseball team and the College World Series, and the Henry Doherty Zoo, and the IMAX Theater, with points of interest northward on 10th Street. Among the points of interest are Western Heritage Museum, the ConAgra campus, Heartland of America Park, and the Old Market shopping area.